Grant Thornton and eCivis have partnered together to provide a modern grants management technology and implementation service for state and local government. We utilize a comprehensive implementation approach to leverage the eCivis grants network. Our solution combines the best of Agile and waterfall methodologies into one iterative development approach that is solution-driven, adaptive and incremental, and responsive to change. This approach reduces risk by getting working software in front of our clients immediately. Our data integration approach creates a scalable, collaborative, web-based solution that seamlessly works with existing applications.
The following is a presentation of eCivis Grants Network, a full lifecycle grants management solution that allows you to create your own programs, to accept applications, review and score those applications, and manage subrecipient reporting responsibilities, such as financial tracking of a budget and reimbursement requests and performance metrics. In this first scenario, I'll demonstrate how multiple different external user personas can be efficiently managed in eCivis using our external portal. Within each one of the programs you create, you can design unique application processes for different types of users, be it a contractor, an individual citizen, an agent on behalf of an organization, or a landlord. The detailed modeling within each one of the applications allows you to funnel them through the correct questions and parameters that each one requires. eCivis manages these different users through our online portal. The portal is self-managed, streamlined, and efficient to allow you to have multiple different user types all within the same portal. Users are able to create their own account, use their existing eCivis credentials if they're an eCivis client, and reuse those criteria for different applications that they may apply for year after year or for different programs. As I log into eCivis through the portal, I can establish my profile page where that common information is held. So if I am an agent applying on behalf of a different organization, it provides the flexibility to be able to handle any one of those different user types, while still being able to enter my authorized representatives for actual signing of documentation and execution of agreements should we enter into an agreement with your organization. And all of this common information will carry over to other applications that this particular user also submits. They can update this profile at any time to keep their information current and up to date. Each different award that a user has received can be individually managed. So they have a way to track and organize their own activities. If they have other individual team members that they need to invite to also participate in this program, they're able to manage their own project team, collaborate, and have the flexibility to have the individuals that need access to each award have that access and perform the activities that they need to perform. When developing the specific application fields and forms that applicants need to enter, this can be customized by the internal user. You develop and decide what text boxes, drop-down menus, radio buttons, checkboxes, file uploads. You can determine what goes into that application process. So if they need to check off a certain project type or category of funding that they're applying underneath, if they need to choose an income bracket that can reference a pre-existing table, such as your HUD income levels that can be automatically generated based on those parameters. You can also have this capture some of their standard profile information, so ownership information or project level information, such as property and location information. All of that can be captured and customized on an individual program level to capture the specific needs of that type of user. Each one of these fields can have specific rules and criteria set up to allow this to branch according to the user's decisions. So as they make decisions, for instance, on a disability type or choose a specific income bracket, those can all have rules associated with them to trigger the correct additional questions that may need to be asked, or to link to a calculation field to automatically calculate their income levels or other criteria of the program. And whether this be an agent, a contractor, or an individual citizen, they're all able to access this information that you have organized and structured as an administrator through the eCivis portal. They would access your public solicitation and apply through this portal to your individual program areas. If we access one of the example programs here, housing rehabilitation, they would enter the fields that you had set up as an administrator on the back-end form. So each individual would customize their profile. This would work if you're an agent submitting on behalf of another organization, or a contractor submitting for a particular project, or as an individual citizen submitting for a request for funds based on a particular program you're applying for. The profile would be completed by the user. That information can be saved as a draft, and you can come back to that information later. Then they can submit projects for that program. There's different structures you can utilize. In the case that you're seeing here, there are numerous projects that you can submit for a single program, or you also are able to limit this to a one-to-one project that's submitted per application. This information here would be entered by the user, completing their application and filling out the required fields as you had prescribed. Each program that you establish can have its own permissions. Users can be assigned to each individual program to be given responsibilities for reviewing applications, managing financial reports, etc. So within each one of these program areas that you see here, we can make those assignments. We're also able to ensure that the right criteria is put together to evaluate which applications are truly ready, have passed a technical review, have passed a peer review. So this example that you see here is of a typical reviewer form where perhaps there is a checklist of individual items within the application that we need to make sure are complete and ready to move on to an award recommendation or a full award status. This also includes automatic emails that are distributed as part of the entire grants process. So as applications move through a submitted status, through a review status, if they are returned to the applicant for more information, automatic emails are part of the system already and can also be uniquely tailored to meet the criteria that you have for the content of each email. Now, each one of those steps in the grant's life cycle can be assigned a unique approval process, so that as awards are recommended for approval, when that recommendation is triggered, a series of individuals within the organization, perhaps a legal team, a financial team, a key leadership team member, can all sign off on that approval process. So the administrator of that program can assign different processes to different sequences in the grant's life cycle and the individuals assigned to them. Those can be done in what we call a standard format, where a group of individuals can all be assigned a task, and any one of them can submit it, or sequential tasks where each individual must individually sign off on a process before it's considered complete. So there's nuances to how you can build the approval processes and link them to these different steps within the grant's life cycle. As I mentioned, that could be the first would, of course, be an award, making an award and recommending award for approval, and then individual subrecipient tasks such as an activity or a performance report, a financial report or reimbursement request, and also a grant amendment where if there's a due date extension or there is an increase or decrease in the award amount, those can all be submitted as amendments and go through those approval sequences and processes. Now, each one of your subrecipients that is awarded funding has a dashboard unique to them that will summarize their award activity. So up at the top here, we've got a summary of this particular subrecipient's award, how much they've received, how much they've currently spent, what is remaining of their award, how much has been dispersed of that award, and how much is remaining that they need to be paid. So we actually know how much has been dispersed and how much money, what checks have actually been cut and sent out to each subrecipient, which really assists in being able to manage the cash flow, the money that has been distributed to subrecipients, and roll those up on a program level to be able to know exactly where you are with each individual program. Now, if we go to an individual financial request, all of these different requests, whether it's a reimbursement request, if it's tracking against their performance stated goals, or an amendment, or the original award, you are able to review those requests, in this case, a financial report submitted against their awarded budget with a specific reporting period and time period that you can establish, and you are able to either approve that particular request, return it to the subrecipient, or reject it if it is invalid. And each one of these steps tracks the communication that occurs back and forth between you and the recipients of your awards. So if I return this to the subrecipient, I can return it with comments, be able to indicate what was incorrect about the report, have them correct that mistake, and resubmit it to me with additional corrected comments so that it can then move forward through the approval process. By approving one of these reports, I move it into the next step of the sequential phase of the approval process. So for instance, if after approval this needs to go to a finance officer from the grant officer, they will have a chance to review the financial request. They can even allot the funding from specific funding sources of the grant and be able to approve that for the items that they need to review. For our second scenario, I'll walk you through the process of managing a HUD award with an eCivis, creating a program with a similar application period, evaluation criteria, and subrecipient management components. So first we'll take you through some of the administrative features, how to do that setup. Then I'll also walk you through the external user experience so you can see how this application would actually be applied for, how you would fill out the budget, how you would fill out the performance metrics. So when you're doing this setup, the first thing you'll do is build a public solicitation, which will act as the portal through which individuals will come to learn about your program and eventually move forward with the application period if they decide to apply and submit an application. So in these first headings that you see at the top here, we're building that public solicitation and then building the processes through which applicants will submit their information to us. So in this overview area, we're building a description about the program and what it will fund. We're titling the program, indicating a application start and end date. This would be the open period for submitting applications. We can include things like eligibility, what types of entities are eligible. If there are any restriction on eligibility, those can be outlined here. In the Financial tab, you can connect to this program the underlying sources of funding, which would usually be the federal sources of funding that the state is receiving, that you're going to have to connect your reimbursements back to those original federal sources of funding so that you'll be able to efficiently track and report back on your federal reporting. So you can link those federal awards to this program, even if that's multiple years of funding for the same grant program, or even if you have situations where you're combining that grant funding, you can include that here as well. The last few tabs in the public solicitation are Contact tab for giving people an avenue to reach out to your program staff, and Embedded Files and Documentation in this Files tab. Those first 5 tabs is what will become the solicitation, which we'll show you in a moment. That is that public portal, similar to terms like a NOFA file or a request for proposal, an RFP, announcing money is available and offering the way to apply to the program. Once those components are built, you can build some of the internal administrative mechanisms for your program. The first would be a review and scoring committee. These are individuals that can be assigned applications to score and rank once those applications are submitted. You can add these as reviewers and eventually assign them applications to score and rank. Next, you will establish the submission process for your application. There are many different settings that you can toggle on and off per program, things like multiple applications per user. So often you have a single entity that applies for multiple projects within a program. This allows you to track each project they're applying for and how much, and have that roll up to a subrecipient level and track their overall application requests, how much they're requesting, how much they've actually been awarded, and eventually how much they've also been expended. The mechanism through which they apply and request funding and eventually report back their reimbursements is in a budgetary format. There are some standard budgetary formats that eCivis provides right off the shelf, such as the 424A and 424C forms that line up with the same federal forms. But we can also create custom budgets for you, which I'll show you in a minute how an applicant would actually fill out the budget, which allows them to categorize them under headings of personnel costs, fringe benefit costs, supplies, equipment costs, so that you can accurately track how the money is being spent according to how they submitted their original budget. The eCivis system also tracks program income. If you have revolving loan funds or situations where property is being sold, or any situation really where program income is being generated from the award, you're able to track that appropriately per uniform guidance regulations. And similarly, you have some options here for 10% budget adjustments without award modification, if that's something that you want to allow, which is also allowable under uniform guidance. This would allow them some flexibility to move funds between categories without having to submit an amendment for any small change. However, that can be toggled off. If that's something that you do not want to allow, you can turn that off. And then any modification whatsoever would require amendment. Next, you establish the goals and objectives of your grant program. And so here, the performance metrics for each program can be established, be it an economic development program such as business revitalization, housing and rehabilitation. It could be jobs created, number of people served, whatever that metric is. You can establish program level goals that then your applicants will indicate what they intend to do with the money that they are requesting. Again, the number of people they intend to serve, jobs they intend to create, etc. And then that becomes the metric that they track against in their reporting. So here we're setting the overall parameters for the program. Later we'll see how an individual applicant can apply and indicate how much they intend or what they intend to do with that funding. Finally, in the Approval tab, all of these different key steps and processes in the grant's lifecycle can have a workflow established for each one of them that is mirroring your internal controls, so that as awards are recommended from the applications that are submitted, that can go to the appropriate individuals for approval. And similarly, once the applicant signs their award agreement and sends it back to you, that can go to a contracts department and a sequence of individuals that you defined, and grant amendments and financial reports or reimbursement requests and performance reports. All of those become internal control workflows that you can establish to create a lot of efficiency in the process, so that as these requests come in, individuals are automatically being prompted to approve things like financial reports or performance requests. Now, once those setup components are complete, you have your goals and metrics, your budget established, your review committee assembled, you're ready to publish your program and start accepting applications. So the view that you're seeing right now is one of an external user, someone outside of your organization who's able to come to a public listings page like what you see here to read about your program, understand the eligibility, the project requirements, the financial funding available, how much awards will range, and make a determination if they're going to move forward with their application. And as long as it's within this window of time between the start and end date, they can move forward with the application by clicking on this little apply button here in the top left-hand window. Now, once they click on that button, they can move directly to the application process, which will pull from their existing profile. And as was demonstrated earlier, and this has the flexibility to work for any type of subrecipient, be it a nonprofit or a local government. So now the applicant would move through the application process by completing the profile and completing the specific components of your application. This area of the application would be customized to the fields and components that you had included in your application development process. Now, in addition to this, they would also submit a budget in the prescribed format that you had built for them to submit it in. This has a standard format that follows the SF424 format, as you can see here: personnel, fringe benefits, travel, equipment. We also can provide other templates that other clients have used, and that other federal forms and formats that are common. And we can also configure this to a setup that is similar to something that you use today. And the applicant would include all of their expenses underneath these parent categories, so that you can separate what costs are related to their personnel expenses, what costs are actual equipment or supply costs or contractual costs that they intend to incur, so that if they become awarded, you're able to track their reimbursements and spending requests against these awarded categories and split that out for reporting purposes down the road in any way that you need to. Now, similar to this budget submission, the applicant would also complete their goals and metrics and performance reporting that they intend to accomplish with this award. So under goals and metrics, they would apply for certain categories that you've prescribed for them on number of businesses they intend to revitalize, housings to rehabilitate, number of people served, housing units built, whatever the metric is that they need to track against. And then similar to the budget, should they become awarded, they will submit performance reporting against these metrics, indicating their actual progress towards meeting their application goals. Now, once these components are submitted, as the individual program administrator, you're able to see the progress of these applications as they're being submitted. So in this view here, we're moving back to an administrator or a grant manager who's able to see the draft status of all applications. They can see which applications have actually been submitted and are ready to move to an evaluation or a scoring form. You can also move applications back into a draft status, track the history of when that application was moved back with automated alerts. It wouldn't be uncommon to have a situation where an application was submitted with incorrect data or for whatever reason needed to be returned, and have that back and forth in the application process. But once those applications are submitted, you're ready to move into a scoring and review process. And for that, you are able to make assignments of any submitted application to one of your designated reviewers. Those assignments can be made in automated format, where based on certain criteria of the application, you funnel the applications to different reviewers. You can also make manual assignments by selecting an application over here on the left and assigning it to an individual over here on the right. There are many different ways that you can organize the scoring and assignments of applications. But once those assignments are made, each reviewer would have a portal through which they are able to view those applications, view the content of each application by clicking on it, and move through a scoring and evaluation form that you have built for them to rank the applications using. So in this screen that you see here, this would be a reviewer and evaluator who has been assigned a certain number of applications and needs to move through that scoring process. So on the left-hand side, they've got the application content, the profile, application, budget, and attachments that have been included as part of the application. And on the right-hand side here, they can include their feedback and scoring criteria. So a pretty typical format would be a conflict of interest of some sort, confirming that they are able to proceed with the application, and then a scoring form that links to components of the application. So perhaps ranking the narrative, the budget, the implementation plan, the key personnel. Any of those areas can be scored with comments and ranking, and then those scores are submitted for aggregating and ranking of the applications. Now, similar to the application process that I demonstrated to you, where you can see the progress of applications, you're also able to see, of course, the progress of your reviewers and that scoring criteria. So which applications still are in progress and being scored, which applications have been scored and by what reviewers. You're able to see all of that activity as it's happening, run reports and sort those reports in order to total up scores for applications to make your final determination on which applications are going to move forward to the award process. Now, once your scoring and ranking is complete, you've determined which applicants will be awarded funding. Now they will move through your prescribed internal control processes as was outlined in the setup of your program. This begins with recommending certain applications for award. So in this recommendation for award stage, you still have the opportunity to alter the budgeted requested item before sending it over to the applicant for final acceptance. You also have the ability to manage some of the internal subrecipient tracking mechanisms to align the application with a parent group or subrecipient group. For instance, there could be multiple different users that have applied under a county or a city over the years. You have the ability to aggregate that data internally to make for more efficient entity reporting. So those are lists that can be managed internally by your users. Then, as I mentioned, you can view the awarded budget that was submitted and make any changes necessary at that time, because of course you may not award this applicant exactly what they requested. So if they're requesting $50,000 in personnel, I can open this up and unlock it, be able to amend this budget and give them something slightly different or in different categories before I send it over to them for them to accept their award. This is also where I can determine the location of the money. So there could be one fund that all of this money is coming from, one single federal award that we're passing through these funds. There could be multiple years of that same program. There could be even a braiding of multiple different sources of the funding. This part of the system will allow you to track where that money is coming from and distribute it according to which program's money needs to be spent first. And then lastly, as part of this recommendation for award process, you can determine the frequency of some of the key reporting elements that are going to occur after award, such as the financial report or reimbursement requests. These can be put on any kind of schedule that you determine, such as a monthly, every 3-month schedule would be quarterly, and due the 15th of every month. Now, by default, you can have this apply to all of your subrecipients, but then also be able to change the frequency of each individual subrecipient as needed. Some may require a higher level of reporting than others, so you've got both a mass way of doing this for efficiency, but also an individual customized way per subrecipient where that is needed. And so setting a start and end date there, and then the same reporting style is also available for activity and performance reporting. Once those awards are finalized, all of the activities that occurred in the process of awarding that applicant and in subsequent financial reimbursement requests, reporting, performance reporting, and amendments, all of these activities are tracked as tasks within the system, so that with each financial report submitted, you can see the status that that particular report is in, review a history of who the approver or approvers were, when that approval was made, and any comments or unique notes that that person needed to take on that particular report. So all of the activity, again, from financial to performance, also amendments, all of those activities are recorded by subrecipient with the individuals responsible for that approval process, the timing of those approvals available in reports. Each subrecipient's activity is also summarized, as you see at the top here, in dashboards, so that you can quickly identify for each award made how much was approved, how much has currently been spent, what remains of that award, and what's been dispersed. Lastly, you are also able to aggregate all of this data into custom reports that you create. So a subrecipient report is available to aggregate data on all of your subrecipients. So the total amount of funding that has been approved underneath a single program, how much of that is federal and non-federal, the performance period for all subrecipients, how much they've expended to date, how much program income they've received and expended, the program income balance remaining. All of that is able to be aggregated into a single report for aggregation of an entire program. So whether it's a program for an individual citizen applying for funds, or a contractor for a particular project, or for a HUD program for different organizations and nonprofits and city entities, counties within your purview, the eCivis system has streamlined processes for all of those activities and easy reporting to facilitate the information that needs to be rolled up to federal agencies and also to internal stakeholders.
As you can see from the demo, our solution provides an alternative approach to grants management that meets and exceeds your requirements. We are proud to provide the Virginia Housing Development Authority with an end-to-end modern, full lifecycle grants management solution. Grant Thornton and eCivis, redefining what it means to manage the full life cycle of grants.